Thanks for joining us, and today we're going to talk about the secret of meditation. So the secret of meditation really comprises two things. One of these is internalization, and the other is inner transformation. And when you combine these two things, you get a very effective strategy for self-development, for spiritual development, for inner harmony, outer harmony, and all these other things. So what is internalization? So internalization is also called in yogic terms pratyahara. So this was a term developed by Patanjali, an ancient Indian sage. And internalization is having an internal perception. And so what does that mean? What that really comes down to is that your senses start to recede. They start to go inwards. And you have this interoception, this inner perception. And consequently, you start to get into what is normally called as a meditative state. What you're experiencing is the galvanic skin response, which is a result of shifting into your parasympathetic nervous system. And then consequently, what happens is that your whole body idle, your brainwaves and everything start to go to a low idle. You start to get into this deep internalized state. And that is what people commonly experience when they say, oh, I've been meditating, right? They have an internalization. And but internalization is not enough. You also need to have inner transformation. And I've talked about this in other videos before. There are some meditation paths that believe that just because you have an internal experience, meaning you get this interoception, this pratyahara, this inner experience of your landscape, that means you're all good, you're all done. You know, your meditation is complete. You're going to reach enlightenment. You're going to transcend whatever it is that you feel you need to get beyond. That internalization is a route for that, but it isn't. It is part of the puzzle. It is one piece of the puzzle. So you want to have an internalization experience, right? Because that will bring your body into a low idle and you start to have inner perception. But once you get inner perception, there are things that need to happen. Talk about it at Modern Kriya, our website, modernkriya.com. We talk about inner transformation as a process. Often a case where people who start to have an internal experience, an inner awareness, this internalization, right? They may get this experience of an expansion of their consciousness, right? Because it's like they're leaving their body behind and getting into their inner vistas, right? So they get this expansion. And, it can be very blissful and very enjoyable. But then what happens is that people will start to say, okay, I want to have that forever, right? I want to have that inner experience forever, that inner expansion forever. And so there are whole religions that have developed around that if you get into an expansive state of enough consciousness, all the other stuff that is in life that is challenging will basically dissolve because you will dissolve yourself in that internal expansion. But the problem is that doesn't actually happen. What happens is you can get an inner experience and inner expansion, but then you realize that there are things inside of you that are not resolved. And what consequently people on the spiritual path can experience is sort of like a seesaw, right? As far as there's sort of happiness and dissatisfaction going up and down and up and down, and they become addicted to the spiritual highs and then loathe the spiritual lows, right? So the spiritual lows are often talked about as delusion, right? So this is, in the Indian traditions, and as well in Buddhism, they talk about sort of the delusion. So my true experience is my expanded state of consciousness, and when I come back to the world and I run into all these challenges, that's delusion. I don't want that. I want to disidentify with that, right? They want to dissociate with that. And I've talked about the danger of spiritual dissociation, because what it means is that you're basically saying, like, the half the world where you're not at sort of an expanded state of consciousness, and all the inner turmoil that you experience, you want to disown that and push it away. The problem is, it's part of you. It's an unresolved part of you. And so at Modern Kriya, our website, modernkriya.com, we take the perspective that yes, we want to learn to internalize, right? and we also need to develop the inner transformation. And often the most prevalent thing among people who are on a spiritual path is that the challenges they have are sort of unresolved emotional issues, and it's interpersonal issues, it's within themselves, it's their experience and their feelings for the world around them, all that kind of stuff. It isn't in a resolved state. It is unresolved, and consequently it is seen as a barrier for their happiness, right? Really what it is something that is unprocessed and unrefined. And at Modern Korea, we are informed by a Taoist internal alchemy approach, and Taoist internal alchemy is all about internal transformation. It is about connecting into the unresolved and then giving it the energetic support that it needs to resolve, right? It's the crux of what we do in Taoist internal alchemy. One of the most effective ways for internalization is Kriya Yoga. And so Kriya Yoga and also its derivative, heart rate variability resonance breathing, help to bring us into a low idle state because it stimulates our parasympathetic nervous system. And once we're in that low idle state, that internalized state, we then open up our inner space for the internal transformation to happen, meaning we connect with the unresolved issues inside of us, and we have different kind of energetic techniques that start to create a space where those unresolved issues can resolve, right? We give it the energetic support that it needs through a variety of practices. So inner smile is something that I've talked about, is so crucial for any kind of inner transformation, right? If you can't accept what you have unresolved inside, it will not resolve. Meaning that if you have baggage from the past or whatever, and you cannot come to terms with it, you cannot accept it, you are not giving it consent to change into something else, to transform, right? You need to do that. So the inner smile is like foundational that we teach at Modern Kriya, and it's really foundational for Taoist internal alchemy. And it's universal for all religions, and many different kinds of spiritual practices utilize something like that, this acceptance, right? Sometimes they project it outwards and sometimes they project it to their deity, but what we do is we project it inside because the unresolved stuff is inside. It isn't out there or there, The ability to resolve and harmonize internal issues, you need to direct your acceptance, your self-acceptance, your self-love inside. If you do not do that, then basically what you do is you're disowning those parts of yourself that are unresolved, suppressing them, pushing them down, and then trying to escape into some kind of expanded state of consciousness. It does not work. So people who say, yeah, I got into the samadhi bliss and blah, 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 and I am enlightened and so on, they got something. They got an expanded state of consciousness. It didn't mean that they got total internal transformation, right? And the thing is about a lot of spiritual paths is they are very kind of dualistic in their thinking. They think like the perception is that, if you're in this sort of regular everyday state, somehow you are not perfect, and then you want to become perfect by being in a transcendent state, right? The thing about enlightenment is it is not a final state, it is a process. It is a process of internal transformation. That's the whole point, right? So you could, there's no way to grade people as far as their enlightenment. Everybody has different stuff that they have inside, right? We all come from different backgrounds, right? Different families, et cetera, different experiences. And the stuff that we have inside of us that is unresolved is our own uniquely. So there's no way that you can put two people together and say, well, Joe's more advanced than Sally because, Joe's doing this and Sally's doing that. Well, who knows what Sally's got inside, right? So the willingness to engage in an internal transformational process is key to spiritual development. If you do not do that, then you can have this sort of you can get into these internalized states, but then you will reach a plateau and you will go, why can't I have a greater expanded state of consciousness now? What's going on? Well, people will say, oh, it's your karma, right? It's the bad things you did, it's your sins and all that kind of thing. That is really, it's blame, it's using a label of blame to talk about something that's just unresolved inside of you. It's neutral, it's just, it happened, right? So, we're not going to say bad sin, bad whatever. You just connect with it and then you give it the energetic support it needs to resolve. That is the crux of what you need to do, right? That is so central. So it's really just about having that inner connection. The inner connection is becoming aware, giving consent for things to change and allowing them to change. So obviously to have an inner perception and for the transformation to happen, you need a process of internalization. And that's why at Modern Kriya, we bring together Kriya Yoga and Taoist Taoist internal alchemy, because the Kriya Yoga gives you the internalization and the Taoist internal alchemy gives you the inner transformation. And when you put these together, you get, whole body enlightenment, right? You get this inner transformation, you get these inner perceptions, and then you start to get into, as an active, engaged participant in your own inner transformation. You're not somebody who's just a neutral observer saying, well, let me just transcend this realm of suffering, and I will leave it behind, and I will be enlightened like the Buddha, and I will live like the Buddha, right? That won't work, because you've got your stuff, and if you don't own up to your stuff and connect with it and do some internal transformation, then you're not going to get anywhere, right? You're going to delude yourself into thinking that you're spiritually developed, when in actual fact you're not. And I've seen many people like that, who have these spiritual ideals, right, that are very, very rigid and strict in the way that their behavior is, right? And they're very judgmental towards other people. But are they spiritually developed? Not really, because there's a whole bunch of stuff that has never been changed, has never been transformed inside of them. And they're just holding on to the outer part of the shell, saying, let's keep it together, right? Through my discipline, I'm going to keep it together. But it doesn't give them the inner transformation they need to move on, to transform, to develop, to spiritually develop, right? To go on that progressive process of enlightenment. They don't have that. They're stuck, right? So don't be stuck. So just realize that you really need both of those things: internalization, so that you can have the inner perception, and then some kind of practices for inner transformation, so you can get the change that you need, right? So that will help you develop in your spiritual life. It's going to spill over into everything that you do, because you're going to find that you become more integrated inside. So you can't be static. Life is not static, it is dynamic. So we also need to be dynamic in our approach to meditation and spiritual development. So if you have any questions about this video, feel free to send me an email at info@modernkriya.com. Also check our website at modernkriya.com and our YouTube channel. So thanks for joining us, and we will see you next time.